What do Arsenal need to do to win the Premier League? Today, we're going to go through Gabriel Jesus, William Saliba and Arteta playing his best team until the end of the season. So Arsenal sit top of the Premier League in a really commanding position. Knocked out of the Europa League by Sporting Lisbon, I think, is going to become a blessing in disguise. Arsenal have got one competition to focus on, and that's a competition they've not won in 19 years. Mikel Arteta has set his Arsenal side up in a 4-2-3-1 this season that moves to a kind of 4-1-4-1 when Arsenal win the ball, or even a 3-2-5 attacking structure. Arsenal have had their injury problems this season. Of course, Gabriel Jesus was injured whilst on duty with Brazil and has missed a massive part of the season. Arsenal went into the January transfer window and recruited Leandro Trossard from Brighton, and it's been an absolute masterstroke. Getting the best out of Gabriel Martinelli, we've seen him return to form with the top scoring Arsenal player in the Premier League this season. The rotation between Trossard and Martinelli has been absolutely fantastic since Trossard's entered the team. The other thing that I like about Trossard is his ability to play deeper than the two central midfielders, really linking Arsenal's offence from that midfield. It's a slight change as teams started to work Eddie and Nketiah out a little bit. They worked out that they could kind of block the passes into the Arsenal front five, and they get a bit of joy out of that. But with Trossard and his performances for Arsenal, he's been playing a super fluid role where at times it looks like he's sitting deeper than the two central midfielders, receiving those balls into feet and then linking the attack for Arsenal. But the first thing that Arsenal need to do to win the Premier League title is reintegrate Gabriel Jesus into their starting 11. Looking at the profile of Arsenal's forwards, Gabriel Jesus provides something, a spark that maybe Trossard and Eddie Nketiah don't quite have. You'd say Eddie Nketiah is kind of that traditional, advanced forward that's going to stretch the byline running in behind, but doesn't do his greatest work when facing a lower block. Trossard, on the other hand, is more of a playmaking number 9, or a false 9, should we say, that will drop off, that will link the play, that will frequently switch positions with his teammates. Whereas Gabriel Jesus brought a real intensity to Arsenal at the start of the season, and I think in the run-in, Arsenal need that intensity back. It's going to be a tough run at the end of the season, and they need someone that's going to be pressing high up the pitch as a pressing forward, but also a dribbler. Something that we saw frequently at the start of the season with Jesus when he came into the 11, of how good he was on the carry, how good he was at beating players on the dribble and creating opportunities for himself and his teammates. And I think Arsenal need that back at the back end of the season, not only his intensity, but his ability to, really sort of create something out of nothing in between the lines. I think really will be a benefit going forward. That, of course, means Trossard could be played wide. That means Trossard could be an impact player off the bench. But also it means if Trossard is in a really good run of form, he could be starting as well. But I think in terms of going forward, the front five for Arsenal should be Martinelli, Granit Xhaka, Gabriel Jesus, Odegaard and Saka to start things off. But the big thing here is Gabriel Jesus, I think he needs to come into the team for his intensity, but also he's got ability playing wide. Under Pep Guardiola, frequently played on the wings for Manchester City, and that actually could be a good way for Arteta to potentially rotate Martinelli, Jesus and Trossard in certain games if there's certain approaches that need to be done. If you need an offensive goal-scoring player that can play in the wide areas, paired with a false 9, go with Jesus and go with Trossard. If you want a little bit more of that kind of directness, that Martinelli quality on the ball to beat a man in the dribble, but also get shots away, you throw Martinelli in. In fact, the statistics are very, very good with Gabriel Jesus on the wing. In 42 club games, Gabriel Jesus has scored 23 goals and got 13 assists playing on the wing, being directly involved in a goal every 97 minutes. And I think that'll give Arsenal another tool for the end of the season, whether Jesus plays as that pressing forward through middle, whether he plays wide left or whether he plays wide right. If Arteta wants to play a natural winger on the side in Saka to kind of change his offense off in certain games, to maybe have more of a creator that's going to hit the byline whilst getting bodies into the box, could be a really good way for Arsenal to slightly tweak their attack and go forward. In his final Premier League season on the right-hand side, Gabriel Jesus scored 7 goals and got 6 assists in just 13 games. Again, another quality of Gabriel Jesus, that ability to change. And I think that's a good thing for Arteta, reintegrating Gabriel Jesus. It's the first thing that Arsenal need to do to win the Premier League title. The second thing they need to do is a little bit of an abstract one, and that is getting William Saliba fit. William Saliba, unfortunately, has a bit of a back back problem at the moment, and for me has been one of Arsenal's best players this season. I think he's been one of the best centre-backs in the entirety of the league, and his return to fitness is going to be vitally important. I think Rob Holding has done a really good job, stepping in off the bench to see out Leeds, but also, performances where he started in recent games against Crystal Palace. Thought he was absolutely fantastic at the back, won 100% of his tackles, made 5 clearances, completed 91% of his passes, 5 out of 5 accurate long balls, won 4 out of his 5 ground duels, 7 out of 8 of his aerial duels, and completed 100% of his dribbles. I thought he played really well against Crystal Palace. But the levels of William Saliba this season have been absolutely frightening, and his ability as a 21-year-old is absolutely scary. And when we look at, how he's played for Arsenal this season and what he's really given them from a defensive position, they're a very, very good side. He's one of the best players in European football in terms of tackling dribblers, and that's been a key part of his game. Take a look at his recent performance against Fulham in the Premier League. 7 clearances, 2 blocks, 1 interception, won 100% of his 4 tackles, 90% pass accuracy. That's exactly what you want in a modern-day centre-back. So getting William Saliba fit is so important for Arsenal to win the Premier League title, especially when you're looking at the games coming up. And I mentioned, look, I like Rob Holding. I think Rob Holding is a very, very good player. But I'd worry slightly if Rob Holding is coming up against, let's say, a Salah, Gakpo, Darwin Núñez attack, with a bit of pace in there. Or you're looking at maybe a little bit later to the Manchester City game with Haaland. I'd massively favour playing William Saliba in those matches, which I think is a really important thing for Arsenal to knock forward. But of course, he's out injured right now, but I think it's going to be massive for him to come back. And a big thing is maybe not rushing him back too fast. Because I think the game that Arsenal should be targeting for William Saliba's return should probably be that Liverpool game. Should be on the 9th of April, which gives Arsenal, a good period of time. We've got this international break. Then Arsenal obviously are playing Leeds United first in the Premier League, and they should be aiming for William Saliba to be back on the 9th of April, which will allow him to get back to fitness. And I think with a back problem as well, there is ways of getting around it. There is injections, but of course it is better to rest it and allow the player to kind of come back stronger in a sense. And finally, the final point of what Arsenal need to do to win the Premier League title is it's a simple one. It's to play their best team week in, week out. The beauty of getting knocked out of the Europa League has meant that Arsenal's fixture list looks very, very good. If we take a look at Arsenal's fixture list till the end of the season, they've got 1 game midweek. That, of course, is against Manchester City. The rest of the Arsenal's fixtures there's a week gap, either Friday, Saturday, Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Saturday, which should allow Arsenal to play their strongest 11 every single week. You remember the great Leicester City team that won it with Jamie Vardy, Riyad Mahrez and N'Golo Kante. One of the big reasons why they won the Premier League was because they played the same 11 most weeks. And Arsenal can now do that. But I also think it might not be playing the same 11 every week, but it's the best 11 for the job. As we mentioned, there's lots of different variations that Arsenal, can do to change the attacking nature of their side. Of course, with William Saliba coming back in, Arsenal's defence looks a lot better. I've really enjoyed the relationship between Odegaard, Ben White and Saka this season. It's been really, really good. Lately, we've seen, Ben White sliding Saka through with through balls, which has been really nice, really good development of Ben White's game. But also on the left-hand side, I mentioned this many times. Zinchenko is probably my favourite Premier League player this season. His ability on the ball has been absolutely outstanding to play make from this inverted left-back position. But of course, the big guys for Arsenal in terms of making things happen, Saka and Martinelli, they've completed the 2nd most and 3rd most dribbles in the Premier League this season, and both of them have got a real spark about them. So those 2 guys playing in those wing positions, I think, is probably a non-negotiable, and maybe rotating in and around a Trossard through the middle, a Fabio Vieira into the central midfield area to add a bit of creativity in that zone. Of course, Smith Rowe could play that position as well. But I do think week in, week out, it should be Arsenal's best team for the rest of the season. We're talking Granit Xhaka, who's been directly involved in more goals this season than he's ever managed in his entirety of his Premier League career. You want Thomas Partey starting week in, week out. I think, the impact of Jorginho has been good, but when Arsenal have not got Partey at the base of midfield, I feel they're susceptible to the carry. Partey is so good in 1v1s. Hence why I think you've got to start Thomas Partey over Jorginho for the back end of the season. And it's simple. That's all Arsenal need to do. They're very winnable games to come. Again, they've got to play the likes of Manchester City. They've got to play Liverpool, Chelsea and Newcastle United. But I would favour Arsenal at the moment in those games. The way that they're playing with Gabriel Jesus coming back, his dribbling, his goal scoring is going to add a real flavour to Arsenal's attack. So the three things that Arteta needs to do: integrate Gabriel Jesus back into the team, get William Saliba fit as soon as possible, but not over-rushing that, and finally playing his strongest 11 week in, week out until the end of the Premier League season for Arteta to win the first Premier League title for Arsenal since Arsene Wenger. But anyway, guys, I've been Statman Dave. Get into the comments below. Will Arsenal win the Premier League? And what changes would you make for Arsenal to knock forward and lift the title for the first time in 19 years? Check out SofaScore. I've been Statman Dave. We'll see you later.